Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Summit Sessions podcast. I am your host, Katelyn Natalie Laurent, and today I have Matt Allen, who is the founder of Kudos Miracles, joining me today. Hello, Matt. How are you?
I am very good, thank you. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, if you could just give us a quick background on Kudos Miracles and yourself.
So, Kudos Miracles is basically a people-driven solution company. We are bringing about some of the biggest solutions to the biggest problems in the world, and we do that through people being the solution. So we find solutions that benefit as many people as possible. And in terms of business, just economically speaking, and supply what people demand. And I very much believe that people are demanding much change in the world today, so that then that can truly benefit many people. And so as a result, we offer to bring about change, not in the sense of disrupting, but more in the sense of bringing about the change that people want, to support people and to make real change, like economy and social benefit for people, and impact into all parts of the world in many different ways, from education to enabling people to be able to show their truth and what they believe in, to result in things like peace around the world. It sounds like very lofty goals, very lofty aspirations, but these are the things that people need, and the solutions that we hold solve those problems.
I love that. Now, you've been called a miracle maker. So, what
Mhm.
inspired you to start Kudos Miracles?
Mm. So that journey started about 15 years ago, back when Google and Facebook and people were really starting to get their teeth into advertising. And one of the original ideas was to actually bring about change for advertising, to make that a lot more direct between people and businesses, so that then businesses benefited from actually getting customers that were interested and needing the things that they were supplying, and at the same time being able to reward people for their commodity as we see it now, which is people's data. And that was the original principled idea, and in the middle was profit, but about how to make that profit work for people, so that then they would want to use a different platform and see the advantage of that. I then rolled into some difficulties because I have a rare health condition and got some complications from that. So I then spent about 10 years in my own bed, or hospital's beds, basically holding on to that solution, holding on to that principle and the idea of how to benefit many people, extrapolating that into some of the solutions that I mentioned before, amongst many, many others. I then realized how to make a miracle in my own life, because I had gotten to the point where I was very much blind, mostly using a wheelchair for getting around. I was not able to eat proper food. I was going to be put onto a feeding tube, and those things were considered to be very irreversible because they were the result of nerve damage. But I now am able to walk. I still have problems with my eyes. I've not managed to turn that around, but if I want to, I can eat a steak or two. So many of the things that exist in my life were miraculous in that sense. And it's not that I go around charging around and saying to everybody, look at what I've accomplished. But I very much believe that everybody is their own miracle in their own way. And the greatest miracle of all that the world potentially needs at the moment is that the biggest miracle is bringing us all together to solve the biggest problems. Again, people being the solution, and then that miracle being bringing us all together in the best way possible.
Now, you state that you have overcome your own obstacles in life with your health condition, and that is mainly the reason why you have Kudos Miracles, is to share. You're pretty much sharing what you went through, and that it is something that you can overcome as long as you have your faith. Am I correct?
So I don't necessarily impart on people any religious or political viewpoint. I just believe that people are able to do more. People believe in what they believe in, and it's not my right to be able to tell people what they should believe in. Much the same as if I believe in something, that I can't say that that is any more different or special than what somebody else believes in. Their belief is possibly as much or more so than mine, and it's impossible to judge how much belief somebody has in a particular thing, whether that be religion or societal value or political viewpoint. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the truth and being able to enable people to live a much more beneficial and positive life, both, well, I say both, but mentally, physically, happier, healthier, wealthier, in a society that actually cares about the people who are in that society, that community, and we can all function as one in a much better way, avoiding all the hate and all of the things that we get told are the truth out there, and instead going back to fundamentals of what people are, which is people are community, people are family, people are interested in love and in getting along, whether you're talking about just a few friends who get together on a Saturday night for celebrating something, through to people going to massive football matches or sporting events of other types, where we all accumulate together to get along and make something enjoyable. I very much think that that is what the world needs more of: love, joy, happiness, and peace, and a little bit of spreading around what's at the top of society, which is too much, and giving that back in some ways to everybody, so that then we can all benefit. And in some ways that contributes to a much more economically viable world where we can all prosper, not what's happening necessarily at the moment.
I love that. It seems like you are bringing back how it was before we had all of this technology between social media, television, newspaper, back when our ancestors were growing up, where it was word of mouth,
Yeah.
face to face, or if they write a letter and send it to their neighbor or whoever, however they mailed things back in those times.
I'm definitely a bit older than you because I understand how that works.
The carrier
But
pigeons.
I'm not that old. I am from the northeast of England, where potentially some of that originated from. But yeah, I do actually very much firmly ground all of this in technology, because there is no reversible way to get back to a society that doesn't exist with technology. In many respects, that needs to be tempered with making sure that technology works for people. And all people, not just a handful of people who want to take people's data and make more control or a lot of money out of that, for example. But being able to give people back a degree of freedom and control that enables them to live in a much more societally pleasing way, going back to fundamentals of who people are, right? Back in those days, I don't remember quite this far back, but I remember being told about people leaving their doors without a lock, without the lock being closed, or just being able to walk down the street and not be concerned about things, or people leaving their cars unlocked, or just a general feeling of happiness, which is sadly missing for a lot of people nowadays. And if you talk to, for instance, a cabbie, as I did a few weeks ago, about the struggles of life, and their struggles of life are pretty much, they can't afford their rent, they can't afford the food and drink that they used to. If they want to go out for an evening, they have to plan that ahead for 2 or 3 months to be able to stand in a position where they're comfortable to be able to afford to do that. Which is a very sad position for our society to be in, that although we have technologically advanced to some extreme level in some considerations, at the same time, the people that should benefit, those people are finding life more and more difficult. And if we were to stop and, as business people, look at that and think, what would those people really like? What would make those people really like my product, my service, my brand, my company? And what those people would really like is to be considered and to be benefited in some way, or to have something like homelessness solved, so that then the company that provided the assistance for that helped to make that happen, that maybe have a business that would make sure that people not only get removed from the streets in the sense of their difficulties that are before them, but also have a future where they can aspire to build houses and be able to afford to buy houses and end up with a business structure for themselves. Then if you apply that to so many different things in society, the place can actually flourish and be a much better place for everybody. And back to how things used to be, where business was about people, customers, staff, and sure, the people at the top, the bosses. But it wasn't all about the bosses, it was about the people, because those bosses realized the customers come first. You serve people, you add more to people's value in their lives, you give back to the community that you serve, and that is how that business would flourish and grow. And that would come from word of mouth, a bit like you're explaining about before, some of the technology avenues that exist today. But we are in that technological world, and some of that needs to be included into business for us to function as society as we are currently, if that answers
Now,
your question.
it does. Thank you. Now I know you talk about homelessness and helping out with, you want the world to be where there is housing available and, families aren't struggling to put food on the table. Now, how do you feel about the programs that they do have out there with the Section 8 housing and the food stamps? Because I also have been made aware that with Section 8, it's very hard. You have families that really could use the help with Section 8, and they're stuck on a waiting list for, you know, who knows how long before they're finally accepted. How do you feel about that, and how does Kudos Miracle come into play when it comes to these types of services?
Sure. So basically, part of the issue that exists in the world today is bureaucracy and paperwork to some degree. There is difficulties with people processing through the system, and that's understandable. Some of these systems are big and large, and they're to protect the country's money, shall we say, or the locality's money that the people are paying in taxes, for example, to be able to provide for the needy in the society. So it's right that that should be looked after in a very professional and upright way. But that's not necessarily always the case. That's done by governments, local and national. And that's also provided by NGOs and charities, which have their place and accomplish many things. But I very much believe that business done in the right way actually holds the answers to solving the biggest problems through enabling people to enjoy life better by looking at things differently. For example, here in the UK, we talk about something called the housing ladder, which is basically as you leave home or you leave university and you aim to go and rent or go to buy a home, if anybody can do that anymore, really, people struggle to get up that ladder, and they have to take the first step up in terms of investment. They need a deposit, they need money to pay their legal fees, they need to scratch together maybe a chair to sit on whilst they're paying for all of that. And that's a very difficult process. And that's becoming more and more difficult for people day to day to be able to keep up with. That's why homelessness is on the increases, because it's more difficult to sustain a home and many other problems societally that contribute towards that. We have basically reimagined that from the housing ladder model to a housing escalator model, which basically helps people on in the first instance and continues to support them and develop them and their community as we flourish and grow as a business that seeks to solve the problems that they have, not by independently supplying something, but integrally working with those people to make their life considerably better, and end up in a process where they get to the top of the escalator, and much unlike a ladder, they achieve what they want to achieve, which is to own a home, for example. But then that escalator, as all escalators do, comes back round to the bottom and continues to bring people to the top, because that is the way of business that actually is very different, where we consider people and what people want. And by considering and providing what people want, we actually flourish as a business. Whereas a lot of the big businesses nowadays, if they were to provide answers like solving homelessness, which they don't do, they would see their products, their services, their brand awareness, their loyalty from their customers growing no end. because they would be providing what people really want. Because we all see people who need homes. We all see people who live in food poverty. We all see people who are struggling and having difficult lives. We all see the problems in our societies, and we all see the wars that are happening all around our world, which we pay taxes for. And we also pay in terms of our lives, or our children's lives, or our families' lives, or our communities' lives, by giving over people to go and fight in those wars, to die at the points of the bullets and other things that we are paying tax towards, when really all of us are about love and peace and happiness. And so I believe, anyway.
No, I completely and totally believe in that as well. Now, since you brought up the subject of war, how do you feel about the veterans that we have? You know, they have I believe it's called the VFA, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully, I'm saying that right, and I apologize if I do not have that correct to my viewers. But how do you feel about the veterans that they're going to seek medical guidance and they're pretty much either made to wait or they're being shooed away? Now, these are the ones that have fought for our country to why we are able to have the things that we have and do the things that we are able to do freely without any issues. How do you feel about those that are pretty much like shunned? It's like, okay, thank you for serving and doing your time, but now that you're not doing it anymore, we're going to ignore you. How do you feel about that?
So recently you had an experience with a team member of ours, Marty Smith. She's a veteran herself, and I've talked to a number of veterans. I visited the US. I can't remember now that it was last year. It's only just turned into 2025. But yeah, last year I went to the US. I spoke to a number of veterans about issues like this and homelessness, because homelessness is something that affects veterans very specifically as well. And really what's felt is that, yeah, we need to very much look after those people, and we need to listen to those people and understand what it is that they are going through. Again, I have nothing against any particular government in that sense, or a governing body over things, but I very much do feel that business has a way to accomplish things that other people cannot, whether that be charities or governmental institutions or anything in between. And really, that's because we can focus upon what the issues are and solving those issues for people. That is the fundamental purpose of an entrepreneur, is to identify problems and solve those problems for people. And by solving those problems, make the world a much better place, where people like veterans, who have so much to offer as human beings, basically because of their experiences, their training, their existence, and their survival and their resiliency, which is something that Marty talks about a lot, it really would enable us to be able to move forwards and benefit from their expertise, their knowledge, their endurance, their understanding of how to solve problems. And we would enable that by giving back to them. One of the things that we actually want to do is something called Kudos Health, which is to take some profit from some of the things that we offer to solve, and to put that money into medical research, not in order to provide some new addictive or symptom-bearing medicine, but rather to find, number one, a way to help people to not get sick, and number two, to find actual answers that solve people's problems, much like I used to be ill in many respects. I still am. My problem will never probably be solved because it's a very unique and rare condition, right? But there are many things in our world, such as type 2 diabetes or obesity, that really shouldn't exist for many people. And some of what you mentioned in terms of the food stamps and stuff like that, there's a real issue with that, because really the food that is on offer for majority of the people in that situation is not necessarily the best food for them and their bodies and solving their stress, but rather leads to complications and difficulties, and more difficulties that lead to more debt and more societal problems, because people are served food and drink soda and chocolate, cake, whatever you want to put on the table, even bread, even the processed meals, the processed foods, all of the things that are set in front of people as cheap alternatives to proper food in that sense. Those are the things that people can afford on that very system, which seems counterintuitive to making those people have a much more fundamentally better life, especially giving that food, that's what we're going to call it, to their children, because that's what those food stamps are there essentially for. We need to provide a much better start for people, and we need to start thinking about how we don't make so many veterans in the world in the future, because we're not putting so many people to war. And again, back to children. In my country, for example, they've started to take people who are of a finishing school age and put them into national service. And by putting them into national service, part of the agreement that they effectively take up is that they are now volunteers, conscripts, whatever you want to call that, into military service if required in the next, I don't know, until they're 65, I think is the current number. And we also get told that we will be having a war with big countries like Russia or China in the next 5 to 20 years, which will result potentially in a lot more veterans, like you mentioned. Wouldn't it be much more sensible to think about how we could achieve peace within 5 to 20 years instead of how to fill the war chests of various countries and produce more weapons at the cost of tax and people's lives? Yet again, to come back to that.
Yeah, it's sad. It is really sad. Um, Now, my next question for you would be, what sets Kudos Miracles apart from other initiatives addressing similar issues?
Because we actually hold solutions. We do not theorize just how to bridge a gap. Many companies that try to solve a problem solve one problem. For example, let's talk about homelessness again. So I mentioned that I went to the States back in the summertime of last year. And we went along to a charity where they were providing water and food to people who were unhoused in Las Vegas. And they've been doing that for the past 25 years. And that to me seems to be a common problem, in that we still have the same problem, except it's considerably worse if you look at the figures and the existence of people on the street in that sense. So those things are getting considerably worse. And these charities, they're nothing against what they do. What they do is essential work. But what they've not done is to solve the bigger problem. The bigger problem is the fact that we need to get those people not just into temporary accommodation, but we need to give them a dignified start to a home. And then we need to, like I say, use that escalator model to be able to provide them support, but also for them to be present and part of that process to move from the bottom of that escalator to the very top, so that then they can be part of changing their own existence, their own life. And the very thing that we do is about providing an end-to-end solution that is driven by people. And that, again, is the very fundamental difference between what we do and what other people do, because most people are driven by making a solution happen from money. And yes, money is needed. It is a system that we all need to operate within to be able to get things done. But when you take money as a contributory factor and rely upon people to make the solution happen rather than throwing money at something, you really get to the heart of what's important, which is those people's lives and how to make that better. And by providing a solution for those people, which, trust me, most of them would like, I imagine, I think it would make a much better solution rather than just throwing money hand over fist as we have done for many years, donating that money and not seeing any real solution. And in some ways, like I said, an increase in the difficulties that those people have instead. I think there's time for change, and I think that that change will come from organizations like ours.
Now, do you think it's also a good idea to push out there? Because I know a lot of people, they just want to take the money and run. I mean, you have people who, if they don't have, they get that sense of entitlement, like I'm owed. This is what I'm owed. Do you think that that has a lot to do of what the narrative that's pushed out with the media? If you're not doing this, and if you don't have the nice cars and the big house, and you're really not doing anything with your life. And then also you have social media that's become a big thing where you have young kids, they're all about, they want their 15 seconds of fame and going viral and going and living in the TikTok houses. And do you think that's also a huge part of what's wrong with this world and why there's homelessness?
I think there's a lot of problems with our world, and a lot of that does come from, as you termed it, the narrative. And that narrative takes many guises, many forms, and embeds itself into many people's lives in many different ways. And I think that realistically, we need to express people's truth, what people really want, and open up for people to be able to do that without any hate speech. And I understand that there's social media platforms that enable people to allegedly say whatever they want, but what tends to happen is that they're part of that narrative in some way, shape, or form. Take, for example, Facebook, that recently last year admitted to having backdoors into it for the FBI and CIA and other organizations. Where you can fundamentally understand that those things are operated for those people's benefit rather than necessarily what people want. So I very much believe, yes, there is a lot of difficulties in the world which come from messaging that we receive in many different ways, and the drive towards what we get taught even in school. If you look at education, for example, as a general rule, what happens is that we go on a conveyor belt. We fit into boxes, and those boxes get pumped out at the end of the conveyor belt to do particular jobs that suit with what the country needs, let's say it that way. So police officer, a baker, or a fishmonger, or a hairdresser, or a lawyer, or whatever that might be, jobs. And most people, if you turn your mind back a little while ago, most people decided that those jobs were not actually what they wanted to do. There was the Great Walkout, for example, where people had gotten fed up with what they were doing, and they suddenly realized, actually, I didn't enjoy doing that. I can think about something different. And that is one of the ways that we can help to change, both for youngsters and for older people, is to educate people about soft skills and entrepreneurialism, and let them to figure out their own way forwards with some help and support, but not just to pump them out into doing jobs. If, for instance, you take that homelessness model that I was talking about before, and instead you apply that, for instance, to university students or college students, where they get something back at the end of renting their accommodation while studying at university, and also possibly learn some entrepreneurial skills delivered to them whilst they're actually staying in a residence where there is a concentration on developing other skills within them, not just academic, then the world can become a much better place, a place where people are thinking for themselves and thinking outside of the box, and potentially coming away from that conveyor belt where they're told that they need to be a particular thing, and instead they think what they want to do and bring their miracle to bear upon the world. I'm not very clever, I'm not very complicated, I just have very simple ideas. Imagine what really intelligent young people could do with their abilities and their interests and the way that they see the world and what they could make out of that. It's just a matter of opening the door to the possibilities, right?
It is. It really is. Now, my last question for you is how can individuals or organizations get involved in supporting this mission?
So we have been functional to some degree for the last couple of years, and I basically started by myself. Here in England, I tried to reach out to local government, national government, business support, or universities, all sorts of things, to try and get my idea, the original idea, the advertising platform, because that was the one that I wanted to put in front of people initially, to help society grow and to find a way to get some support as a still semi-disabled person, to bring about these ideas that I had and what that would mean for people. I find myself 2 years later, having not had any useful interaction with any of that, finding myself on LinkedIn, where I met you, for example, and Marty and a number of other people who are very much interested in what I propose, in the solutions that I bring, and how we can make miracles happen right at the very time when our world needs them the most. So we are currently at this position of holding in our hands some pitch decks and some executive summaries and a lot of other things, as well as some team members and a thriving community within LinkedIn. And we're slowly but surely expanding. In fact, quite rapidly. At the end of this month, we are looking to take on some more interns and potentially some volunteers. Now, we are traveling a journey, and we started 2 years ago with just me. And it's very difficult to change the world as just one person. And that miracle, like I said, is the unification of many miracles together to traverse that journey, to get from point A to at least point B, and then consider where to go forwards from there. I have a number of team members. You've met a couple of them, and a lot of interested parties, and I welcome anybody and everybody to partake in that. We have a website, which we are, like I say, taking on some interns to be able to redevelop, because I am not a web developer. By no means is it a very good thing. But we're at this point where we are starting to endeavor to take on investors and supporters and team members and volunteers and interns, because we are really pushing forwards and getting the attention that we very much deserve. And we hope to blossom into things that really make a difference for people. If you can imagine, I am a guy without a degree. I am a guy who for 10 years didn't work. And just 2 years in, effectively, I have a team of volunteers from all around the world. Some of them do podcasts like this, interviewing people, and very interesting people who then align themselves to what we do. In fact, I came across your post on LinkedIn because one of the people that we both know put me a message across to say, Matt, this is potentially something that you should be involved in. And there's a lot of that goes on in the background. So if anybody wants to change the world, if anybody wants the world to be a lot more like, and you alluded to this a little bit, a lot more like we imagined it would be when we were younger, when we were at school, and we thought to ourselves, I'd like to see the world through this particular lens, because that's how we all viewed the world back then. Was a much better place, a place where we actually had food on the table and we could turn the lights on at the same time as eating the food on the table, and afford the home that we would live in with our wonderful family and a nice car and a happy world which was filled with peace, not with war. So if anybody's interested in making that happen, please do get in touch.
Now, what's the best way for people to reach out if they are interested in helping out with making an impact on the world?
Sure. So, like I say, mostly I am working through LinkedIn because that seems like a very business-orientated place. So they can reach me through LinkedIn. Just type in Kudos Miracles and you will probably find me. My name is Matt Allen, so you should find me through that as well. My picture looks very much like my face today. I haven't changed that much since I put it up a couple of weeks ago. So I think that most people would be able to find me. And we do have a website, like I said, that is simply www.kudosmiracles.com. Pretty straightforward. Just search Kudos Miracles.
And you heard him, everyone. So if you are looking to make an impact on this world, you can reach out to Matt Allen on LinkedIn, or you can go to the website at www.kudosmiracles.com. Thank you again, Matt Allen, for joining me today. And I look forward to just, keep reading all the impact you're making on the world and all the different interactions you're having, and especially the wonderful people you're bringing on board. I think your mission is important to everyone, not just me, but to everyone, because I do have, little kids that I sit here and I look at the world through their eyes, and it's just amazing how they're able to cancel out the negativity and the nonsense and stick with being positive and enjoying the fruits of their labor with the world. I wish that I could be exactly like them without dealing with all the stress and the headache.
Well, yeah, there is that. But yeah, the children are the most important thing, right? And we talk about legacy. What really would be the biggest legacy in the world? what would really be the thing that we would hope to leave for our children? A much better world, a happier world, a place filled with love, joy, peace, happiness, and benefit for everybody, and a way for us to really start to open the door, like I said, to the miracles that your children, everybody's children, represent through having peace, through having the healthcare that really cares about people, by having food systems that actually give people what they need to be healthier. In terms of that, we can keep those children alive for longer. We're not going to put them to war. We're not going to fill their bodies with poison. We're not going to treat them when they get medically unwell because of the food and other conditions. We're not going to treat them to medicine that we all know is not the best thing for us, let alone for them. So it's time for change and time to enable those children and children for all time to be able to make really big miracles happen.
Absolutely. Again, Matt Allen, I want to thank you for your time. And remember, everyone, you can find Matt Allen on LinkedIn, or you can also visit his website at www.kudosmiracles.com. I am your host, Katelyn Natalie Laurent, and this has been a wonderful episode of the Summit Sessions podcast. And I want everyone to have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Matt Allen.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day.